Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily.
At some point, simultaneously, one of our officers is in the area. She produces a handgun and begins firing.
A woman is arrested after opening fire at a Dallas airport. And
he never pushed me, kicked me, or threw me down any stairs.
For the first time since testifying, Kate Moss breaks her silence. Plus, it's Petito versus Laundrie. The parents of the ill-fated couple go head-to-head in recently filed court documents. And later,
would that wound in and of itself be fatal?
Yes.
Parents of victims have an emotional response in the Parkland school shooter penalty phase trial. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm your host, Brian Buckner. A woman is shot and taken into custody after she opens fire at Dallas Law Field Airport in Texas. It happened Monday morning when police say 37-year-old Portia Odofowa began firing a gun toward the ceiling. An officer on scene responded and shot her in the leg. She was taken into custody and treated at a nearby hospital. In the days following the incident, more information about Odofowa's past has come to light, including a lengthy criminal record and past outlandish claims. Records obtained by the Dallas Morning News show Odofowa was found burning a house in 2019 where she claimed to be God's prophet. On multiple occasions, Odofowa told police officers her home address was singer Chris Brown's. She also called Chris Brown her husband. In multiple cases, Odofowa was found incompetent to stand trial and was referred to inpatient and outpatient mental health services. Last year, a Dallas County judge ruled she was not a danger to others. At a press conference on Monday, the Dallas police chief explained what led up to the shooting and how on-scene officers responded.
At about 10:59, 37-year-old woman gets dropped off, goes inside near the ticket counters in front of Southwest, goes at one point into a restroom, exits the restroom. Now she's either put some sort of hoodie on or some other different type of clothing that she had when she walked in. At some point, simultaneously, one of our officers is in the area. She produces a handgun and begins firing. At this point, we don't know where exactly the individual was aiming. Or most of what we're seeing now, she was aiming at the ceiling. But there was several rounds that are found. Simultaneously, as she's doing that, our officer engages the suspect, strikes her in the lower extremities. She's taken into custody and is currently at Parkland Hospital.
Joining us today is criminal defense attorney Taylor Koss and co-host Terry Austin. Taylor, it's the question everyone is likely thinking, so we'll ask it first. How many things had to go wrong for her to get a gun?
Well, Brian, this is basically a failure of epic proportions with the blame spread out all across the criminal justice system and into the gun sellers industry. First, how many times does the woman have to, A, be violent, and B, actually brandish a weapon before the criminal justice system is going to step up and do something? I read just last April she brandished a gun at a hotel clerk somewhere. So this was in the making for many years, and yet consistently the criminal justice system essentially, chewed her up and spit her out. How is she able to get her hands on a gun when there are numerous rulings in numerous court cases that she's not even fit to stand trial? She's not competent to stand trial. How can you possibly be competent to own a handgun? This is just an epic failure across the board.
Yeah, and kind of to use Taylor's language, kind of chew her out and spit her out as a system. Terry, the question now becomes, shot in the leg and brought in alive. She was, as Taylor said, unfit to stand trial before. What's likely going to happen to her now going forward?
Well, look, under the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, you have to be competent to stand trial. That means you have to understand the proceeding against you, and you have to be able to assist your counsel. I think here, like before, she will not be found to be competent. And if she's not, what happens next is there are different categories depending on the crime. She could literally be released on her own recognizance or put bail. Obviously, we are hoping that that's not going to happen. But she could be put in an outpatient restoration. She could be put in a mental hospital, or if it's a crime that's harsh enough, high enough, she could be in a jail-based competency program. So here, I think they're going to find her not competent, and I think that she'll be in some sort of mental health program for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't see any attempted murder charges if they're saying she shot straight in the air, but maybe reckless endangerment. Charges like that could have some bail set on her. Well, heading north to Illinois, a viral TikToker is dead in an apparent murder-suicide. Law and Crime correspondent Sierra Gillespie has the story.
A murder-suicide rocks the Windy City when a man kills his ex-wife after she discusses their divorce on TikTok.
Girl, don't do it. It's not worth it.
Officials say 29-year-old Sonia Khan was shot and killed on July 18th by her ex-husband, 36-year-old Raheel Ahmed. Investigators say Ahmed drove 11 hours from his home in Georgia to Khan's Chicago condo. As first responders approached the scene, investigators say Ahmed turned the gun on himself. In a statement to Law and Crime Network, Chicago police said both were discovered unresponsive, with gunshot wounds to the head. This comes after a series of TikToks posted by Khan went semi-viral as she opened up about her relationship and divorce. In one TikTok, Khan wrote, quote, "Going through a divorce as a South Asian woman feels like you failed at life sometimes. The way the community labels you, the lack of emotional support you receive, and the pressure to stay with someone because what people say is isolating. It makes it harder for women to leave marriages that they shouldn't have been in to begin with." Other videos show Khan providing support, saying, quote, "You are not a failure because your marriage did not work out." More TikToks depict Khan seemingly enjoying the single life. Police in Georgia say Ahmed's family reported him missing, saying he was depressed and likely went to salvage the marriage. Friends of Khan say the divorce was finalized back in May. Officials say Khan was pronounced dead at the scene, while Ahmed was pronounced dead at Northwestern Hospital. A weapon was recovered at the scene, and the incident is still under investigation. Reporting for Law and Crime Network, I'm Sierra Gillespie.
And in New York, a man who was the 6th co-defendant in the Central Park 5 rape case is exonerated of the crime he pled guilty to more than 3 decades ago. In 1989, a group of Black and Hispanic teens were accused of beating and raping a white woman, Trisha Milley, while she was out jogging in Central Park. She survived the brutal attack and testified against the defendants, but did not remember the assault. 5 teenagers went to trial after giving false confessions. The high-profile case dubbed them the title of the Central Park 5. A 6th member of the group, Stephen Lopez, pled guilty in a separate case to avoid the rape charge and avoid going to trial. Decades later, another man, Matias Reyes, who was not previously convicted of the crime, confessed to being the sole attacker. The 5 men's convictions were overturned, and they each received a settlement from the city. On Monday afternoon, the Manhattan DA moved to overturn Lopez's conviction as well, citing flawed investigative techniques and Lopez pleading guilty in the face of external pressure and false statements. There was also no physical evidence which tied Lopez to the attack. Lopez previously spent almost 4 years in prison years ago for the crime. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, the parents of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie face off in a legal battle. But first, Kate Moss speaks out for the first time since testifying in the Depp Heard defamation suit. Welcome back. For the first time since testifying, supermodel Kate Moss breaks her silence about the Johnny Depp-Amber Heard defamation trial. Last month, a jury ruled largely in favor of Depp, saying the actor was defamed in a Washington Post op-ed written by ex-wife Amber Heard. Heard claimed she was a survivor of domestic abuse, while Depp maintained he never physically abused her. After weeks of testimony and nearly 13 hours of deliberations, a jury awarded Depp $10 million in compensatory and $5 million in punitive damages. Heard was awarded $2 million in compensatory damages and $0 in punitive damages over statements made by Depp's attorney. Heard has since appealed the ruling, and Depp counter-appealed. In a newly released radio interview with BBC4, Moss commented on the case, saying, quote, "I know the truth about Johnny. I know he never kicked me down the stairs. I had to say the truth." Moss, who had a romantic relationship with Johnny Depp from 1994 to 1998, became a cornerstone of conversation after Amber Heard mentioned her while testifying. Heard alluded to an alleged Kate Moss stairway incident in which she believed Moss was abused at the hands of Depp. Depp's team later called Moss herself to testify as a rebuttal witness.
There had been a rainstorm, and As I left the room, I slid down the stairs and I hurt my back.
How did you...
And
I apologize, Ms. Moss. Please continue.
and I screamed because I was in because I didn't know what had happened to me and I was in pain. And he came running back to help me and carried me to my room and got me medical attention.
Did Mr. Depp push you in any way down the stairs?
No.
During the course of your relationship, did he ever push you down any stairs?
No, he never pushed me, kicked me, or threw me down any stairs.
Terry, does Moss speaking about her relationship bring anything new to the Depp-Heard saga?
Not in my opinion, Brian. Look, her testimony was fortunate. It was only because on the stand, Amber Heard accidentally said, oh, yes, Kate Moss said that he pushed me downstairs. So they were lucky to get that in. That was evidence that was character evidence. It wouldn't normally get in. It's more prejudicial than probative. But I think the reason she did that interview, if you recall, during the trial, they wanted to ask her, why did you come to testify? You've never testified before. And the defense, Heard's team basically said objection, and the judge didn't allow it. So I think Kate Moss just wanted to say Johnny Depp's a good guy. He would never do anything like that, just to support what she originally said.
Yeah, which makes sense because the case isn't technically over, Taylor. Heard and Depp are both appealing the case. Will Moss's continued support of Depp affect either appeals?
You know, the only thing I could say about it on a legal, from a legal vantage point is this. If Heard's attorneys thought there was any wiggle room here, if there was any latitude, anywhere they're going to make any issue of the Moss angle, this shuts it down completely. This is Kate Moss speaking, through the public, letting Amber Heard and her attorneys know, I am not and will not ever be on your side in this. Back off, leave me alone. I'm done.
Yeah, I'm doubting that there's going to be any subpoenas from Amber Heard's side to Kate Moss anytime soon in this appeal. Well, British socialite and former Jeffrey Epstein madam Ghislaine Maxwell is moved to a low-security prison in northern Florida following her conviction for sex trafficking. Maxwell was convicted in December on 5 federal charges, including sex trafficking, accused of conspiring with Epstein to recruit, groom, and sexually abuse minors for a decade in the late 90s and early 2000s. The 60-year-old was sentenced to 20 years in prison and has since filed notice that she intends to appeal her conviction and sentence. Epstein was indicted on similar charges in July of 2019, but died by apparent suicide in prison a month later. Despite requesting to be placed at a prison in Connecticut, on Friday, Maxwell was moved to the Tallahassee Federal Correctional Institution, where she will serve out the rest of her sentence. Maxwell is due to be released in 2037. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, the Parkland school shooter penalty phase trial. Plus, the parents of Brian Laundrie respond to harsh accusations brought on by the parents of Gabby Petito. Welcome back. The parents of Brian Laundrie are responding to accusations that they knew about Gabby Petito's death before she was found. This comes amid the late vlogger's parents suing the Laundries for emotional distress. Petito was reported missing last fall while on a cross-country road trip with fiancé Brian Laundrie. Her body was later found in Grand Teton National Park. Her cause of death was ruled to be strangulation. After a weeks-long manhunt, Laundrie's remains were discovered in a Florida reserve. Authorities determined he died by suicide. Along with his remains, investigators found a written confession where Laundrie admitted to killing Petito. In recently filed court documents, Chris and Roberta Laundrie deny all allegations in Joseph Petito and Nicole Schmidt's lawsuit, alleging they knew their son killed Gabby and kept her slaying a secret. On Monday, Gabby's parents responded, denying all affirmative defenses in the Laundrie's filings, attempting to negate liability. Trial proceedings in the case are set to begin next August. Terry, in the Laundrie's reply, they can admit, deny, or neither. What do they deny that makes you believe this is going to be a contentious case?
Well, the Laundries are basically denying that they knew anything about Gabby's death. That's the most contentious point. And if you look at the timeline, I think that it's going to be hard to refute it, although there's not going to be any forensic evidence, or we haven't heard that there's going to be any forensic evidence Remember, Brian Laundrie returned from that camping trip on September 1st. And between the time he returned and when they found her body weeks later, they went on a camping trip together as a family and they spent time together. So it's really an assumption, I think, that the Petito family is making, that of course Brian talked to his parents. He was together with his parents. They went camping together. And so of course he must have mentioned it, but they're going to have to prove that with some sort of evidence like phone records. And I don't think they'll be able to do that. I think probably this was all conversations and no one has really documented that. And I don't think we're going to see that.
Yeah, it comes back to the age-old saying it's not what you know, but what you can prove. Taylor, but this is an interesting part, though. The Laundries are arguing there was no intent or malice. Could that mean that they could have known where their son was, but just didn't mean for it to harm the Petito family? And is that a defense?
So, it's standard practice when you're answering any type of civil lawsuit to essentially deny every single allegation against you, except for the ones that are so obvious, such as, I live in New York City and my name is Taylor Koss. Other than that, you're going to deny everything. What's interesting here is, as you stated, they argue in the alternative. We had no knowledge, but if we did have knowledge, it was without any intent or malice. My position on this is pretty basic, is if they are able to establish that they did have knowledge, then I think the malice and the intent is going to be easily inferred, because the whole country was watching these parents suffer without knowing what happened to their daughter. Where's the argument that they'll be able to make that, yes, we knew, but there was no intent to hurt them or injure them? Their hurt and their pain was on display for everyone to see.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. It's going to be an interesting lawsuit played out in the public, as much of this case has been so far. Well, when we come back, the Parkland school shooter penalty phase trial. Parents get emotional as the medical examiner testifies. Welcome back. The man who sold the Parkland school shooter the murder weapon takes the stand as the penalty phase trial stretches into week 2. A Broward County jury will decide whether the shooter receives a life in prison sentence or the death penalty. Last year, the shooter pled guilty to 17 counts of murder and 17 more counts of attempted murder in connection to the deadly shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018. On Tuesday, jurors heard from the man who sold the gunman his weapon.
Do you have any procedures you follow?
Every customer is engaged in conversation. We look for any red flags, any signs that why the sale should not happen. If for any reason anyone was uncomfortable with anything about the sale did not happen, period.
Okay. And did you engage that conversation with Nicholas Cruz?
I had a brief conversation, I believe, on pickup, as I stated in my deposition. I came out and asked him, what are you going to do with the rifle? And the reply was, I go shooting with my friends on the weekends. I just want my own stuff.
Later, parents in the gallery got emotional as the medical examiner describes fatal wounds.
Gunshot wound A is a penetrating gunshot wound to the right side of the chest. It injures the upper lobe of the right lung, and the spinal cord is transected. There's 600 milliliters of blood in the right side of the chest, and the 7th thoracic vertebrae is also fractured.
Okay. Would that wound A in and of itself be fatal?
Yes.
And would Mr. Alex Schachter be able to move, because you said it transected his spine?
Correct. It transects his spinal cord.
Okay.
At the level of the 7th thoracic vertebrae.
And what does that mean?
So he can't move from that level down.
Taylor, the devastation that this weapon can do on a person's body will be on full display in this trial, and even the sale of the weapon, which seems like almost like a rubber stamp of a conversation. Do you think that will affect the broader conversation as to whether these guns should be available to the public?
Brian, every time we suffer through one of these mass casualty events in this country, I say to myself, and I know many others say, this is it. We've reached the breaking point. We've reached the tipping point. We can't possibly, as a nation, continue to embrace assault weapons and guns in general. And yet every single time the country does. And we just move on until the next one. And then everybody is shocked and upset and dismayed again. And so while this particular incident was so devastating and so disgusting on so many different levels, I fear that it's not going to change the broader conversation, because the strength of the gun lobby and the gun enthusiasts in this country is simply overwhelming, and it upsets me on a daily basis.
Yeah, I share similar sentiments as well. And when you see children dying, that it doesn't move the needle anyway. Well, Terry, the man who sold the gun to the shooter said he asked why the defendant wanted the gun. Was that enough?
No, absolutely not. It was not enough. And these red flag laws only going to work if you ask the right question. The witness, Michael Morrison, said he asked whether or not what he wanted the gun for. And of course, you're going to get someone who's going to say, well, I just want it for a shooting practice. He's not going to admit he wants to shoot up a school. And so even if we have some laws in effect, like a red flag law, it's not going to work unless you pursue the individual and ask real questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.